and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a new thing for me, so yeah, let me know in the comments if you find these videos helpful. I'm Vicky, I run Social Work Sorted. I am a social worker with experience in child protection as a social worker and a child protection conference chair. And through Social Work Sorted, I provide resources for newly qualified social workers and students. And I am asked all the time to talk about organisation and time management, and that is what I'm doing in this series. But there are a couple of caveats, a couple of disclaimers, if you like, that I want to share before I get into this video, which is 4 ways that you can use your Outlook calendar. The main thing is, I want to be really clear, no amount of organisation and time management can change a under-functioning system. So by that I mean that as a newly qualified social worker, there will be a point in your career, whether that is your ASYE or not, where you are given an impossible amount of things to do in an impossible amount of time. And so you can be the most organised social worker in the world, and it will still get to a point, or it can still get to a point, where things feel too much, where everything feels too heavy, where you are completely overwhelmed. And if you believe that that is down to your poor organisation, your poor time management, something that you haven't done or you've not been organised enough, then that ignores the impact of the wider systems on your day-to-day job and tasks. And it means that you will internalise that and you will feel like a failure, when in actual fact it's so much bigger than anything like an Outlook calendar. So I'm here to provide you tips that will be helpful, but I also want you to consider them in context, because like I said, you can have the most amazingly colour-coded, organised Outlook calendar and you can still be given an impossible number of things to do. I'm going to pause this because there is light shining in, and although it sort of looks like I've got a bit of a halo, I think it might be annoying for you to watch a video like this the whole way through. Give me 2 minutes. Sorry about my plant as well. It looks really worse for wear. I've given it some water today. Maybe it needs a bit more. So let's get into it. 4 reasons why you should use your Outlook calendar. Full disclaimer, I've got notes. For your safety, to prioritise your self-care, to make sure that you have a record of all the tasks that you've completed, and to be able to reflect on those tasks, how you have felt in particular weeks. It can be a really good reflective tool as well. The first reason, prioritising your safety. When you use an Outlook calendar, it means that you can invite your manager, your colleagues to be able to view your Outlook calendar as well. And this isn't about it being Big Brother and somebody monitoring your every mood, but it is every move, not mood. It is about prioritizing your safety. So if you then record in your Outlook calendar, if you are going on a particular visit, a lot of the time you're not supposed to write the actual family's name in. You can use the number or the reference that you use in your case recording system. It just means that somebody knows where you are. So if and this isn't to scaremonger you either, but you know, in the event that you have a meeting booked and you haven't made it, people aren't then, you know, going into panic about where you are. They can simply look at your calendar and say, okay, well, Vicky was supposed to leave that visit an hour ago. She hasn't. Let's try and ring her. If we can't get in contact with her, at least we know the address that she was supposed to be at. And the visit might have run over. She might still be on her way, but at least they have a way of contacting the place where you were supposed to be, whether that is a family or a school or a different meeting. It just ensures your safety. It means that if you ever are overrun with things to do, if you have the second reason I have for you using your Outlook calendar is to prioritise your self-care. I don't mean going to get a massage in your lunch break. That would be lovely. I'm talking about the simple act of taking a lunch break in the first place. And my brother is personal trainer. Bear with me, I do have a point to get to in this. But he explains budgeting calories in the same way that you would budget your finance. So if you got paid you would pay your bills, your essential things first. You would then pay for things that are more of a necessity, and then if you have anything left over, you would buy things that, you know, you potentially don't really need. He uses that analogy with calories. So he would say, well, you budget your calories for your protein first, the things that really like fill you up and sustain you. Then it's kind of other things that your body needs. And then if you have anything left over, that's what you use for your chocolate bar. I like to think of an Outlook calendar this way. So, you know, think about your time as a budget. You want to book in your breaks first. So you want to allocate that budget first, block them out in your calendar, set it as a recurring event in an Outlook calendar. It doesn't mean that you're going to take a lunch break at the same time every single day, because that isn't social work. It might mean that that break is moved around, but by having it there in front of you, you are far more likely to take it than if it's not there at all. And I can't sit here and say that as a social worker, I've had a lunch break every single day of my entire career, because some days it just doesn't happen. So I'll be realistic about that. Some days lunch happens in my car, it happens at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. But I have always prioritized that break. And like I said, you're far more likely to take it if it's actually written in. You can do things like invite a colleague. So, you know, you both are accountable to each other for making sure that break happens. I used to do this when I was working from home in COVID, so I knew that I would, you know, have that time. I would go on Teams to a colleague and make sure that we both have that conversation, have that interaction, and simply take that break. So it's really important in terms of thinking about it like a budget and thinking about what you are going to budget in. Treat it like you would any meeting, any home visit. Give it the same priority, because it builds up, it adds up. The more days that you are not taking a break and eating properly, it is going to impact your health. The other thing that I would often include in an Outlook calendar might be plans that I have outside of work, because sometimes if it's not in that calendar, I forget it's happening. And if you have places that you absolutely need to be after work, it can be really helpful to just put them as a reminder in your calendar. So then when you are trying to pack it full of meetings and visits, you know the days where it's just absolutely not possible for you to stay any longer in an office or to work overtime. And again, if those things are in there, it's far more likely that you are going to stick to that and adhere to the boundaries that you set for yourself. Social work is not a job that is predictable in any way. So I'm not saying that you'll be able to do this every single time. It just makes it more likely. The third thing I want to talk about is including every single task. This might sound like death by Outlook calendar, and this might not be for everybody, but quite often, and I know I can look back on calendars that I've used in the past, I would put in my home visits, I would put in my meetings, and then I might leave a blank space. That didn't mean I wasn't doing anything, because I was traveling to and from home visits, I was making phone calls after those home visits, chasing things up. I was attending meetings, traveling to meetings, writing up the minutes of those meetings, doing all the other admin that I needed to do, maybe then going out on an emergency visit. And if I looked back on that week, a couple of weeks later, and I didn't have those things included, it almost did a disservice to the amount of things I had been doing. By putting everything in, it gives a really clear track of your time. And I don't think you should have to do this as a social worker, but the times where it may be very useful is when you get to supervision and somebody is trying to give you more cases, or is asking you to give reasons why you were feeling overwhelmed, or to, I suppose, look for evidence. It can feel sometimes as to why you're feeling a certain way or why certain things are happening. If you can go back in your calendar and actually say, well, on this day, you know, I wasn't able to do X, Y, and Z because, as you can see, I spent an hour making phone calls for this particular task. I spent an hour writing up those minutes. Then this emergency visit came in, so I had to go out on it, and that took 3 hours. Social work is so fast paced, and if you don't keep up with those things, it can be very hard to remember what you did 2 weeks ago and how long it took and which nights you were staying late. And you know, again, it's not scaremongering, because you're not going to have managers that sit down and say, what were you doing at this time on this day? But it can be that really helpful evidence for you to measure what you are spending your time on. And I suppose in terms of a shift in systems, I think a lot of that will come from data. And if you were able to say, well, actually last week I ended up doing 20 hours of admin, and this is when I did it, it's just a little bit clearer for that. It also then means if you want to take time back, so if you are working overtime, which so many social workers do, you can say, well, it's from this date, because again, your manager's probably very busy. And so if you say, oh, it was a couple of weeks ago, I worked, overtime, or I ended up having to go out and stay late till this time. If you can be really clear and say, well, it was on the 18th of September on, whichever date, and I sent you this email on this date to tell you I did it, you're far more likely to be able to take that. And the fourth reason, or the fourth way that you can use your Outlook calendar, has a reflective tool. Bear with me on this one as well in terms of what I'm trying to say. I colour code my calendars. Not everybody is a colour coder, and not everybody is as extreme as me, but I found this really helpful because, like I said, when you're tracking the time that you are using, whether that is kind of travelling to and from meetings, admin time for phone calls, if I had that in colours, it would be really easy for me to reflect on why I was feeling a certain way at the end of a certain week. So for example, if all my visits are green and my admin is purple, if my week, if I at a glance is majority purple and not as green, that usually correlates with the way that I'm feeling at the end of that week. The best thing about social work for me has always been being with people, being in communication, visiting families, visiting children and young people, direct work. Like, that's the bit that I love. That's the bit that most of us love. And so if my week is looking like all purple and no green, it shows me that I'm not doing the thing that I love. And again, it comes back to that idea in the BASWA campaign, the 80-20, I'll link it all in the show notes, about us being able to demonstrate how much we are being taken away from the parts of the job that we really love, and thinking about whether we can structure our week in a certain way that we get to do the parts of the job that we love, and thinking about, our time. Do you have more energy for people in the morning or the afternoon? So does that affect when you want to book in your visits or your meetings, or if you've got a particularly challenging group of professionals in one meeting, do you need to do that at the start of the week because the last time that you did it on a Friday, it ended your Friday really badly? So just start trying to think about that in terms of the ways that you can use your calendar to reflect on and manage time as much as possible. And again, I'm just going to say this so many times in all these videos, it will still mean, you'll still have stress, you'll still have difficulty. This is not a sort your Outlook calendar and tick the box type of training. Please let me know if it was helpful for you. If any of these pointers were useful, you can let me know in the comments. If you want more videos like this, or any topics that you want me to cover, again, put it in the comments. Make sure you subscribe so you can access the next video in this series and any future videos. Thank you so much for watching. And just to add, you can follow me on Instagram at Social Work Sorted. I have a podcast, Social Work Sorted, the podcast. There are links in the show notes to my website, to a free training resource, Confident Communication for new social workers, and there is information about my membership, The Collective, where I host monthly masterclasses, mindfulness and meditation, and live Q&As for all members. It is suitable for students and newly qualified social workers. And if you need any information about any of the things I've shared, my email is in the show notes as well, and you can reach out to me at any time. Have a lovely day.